One of the biggest things that sticks out to me when I think back about certain video games is the music. Some music just pulls you right back into how much fun you had when you were younger with a game. Some music also reminds you of how bad or how goofy a game was. Regardless, one thing's for sure, there is quite the selection of different video game music from throughout the years. Whether good, bad, or just plain silly, these songs are still stuck in my head. This is unique video game music. I used to play Cruisin' USA at a local theme park arcade back in the mid-90s. This game was innovative in many ways. In a transitional period where 2D racing games were becoming old news, Cruisin' USA offered great visuals, a fun play mechanic, and some pretty interesting music. It sounds like some kind of early 90s high school sitcom theme. Well, let's try it out. Cruisin' USA would celebrate quite the success over the years, and it even spawned a few sequels. Cruisin' World hit the arcades with more cars, more locations, and yet another memorable theme song.
Cruisin' the world, yeah, yeah. You've got the speed, you've got the power to cruise the world.
Disney games for the Genesis were generally pretty good and usually feature great soundtracks. And then there's The Little Mermaid. Okay, so the title screen music is a bit disturbing, but it can't all be bad, can it? San Francisco Rush is one of my favorite games from the 90s, and while it was known for having a diverse soundtrack, one song that still stands out in most people's minds is the track that plays when it's time to enter your name.
What's your name? Start with a C. Start with a G. Start with a Z. Nothing nasty now.
I miss this kind of lightheartedness from games. Most racing games these days take themselves way too seriously.
I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. That's how you spell it.
What's your name? What's your name?
Fighting games in the 90s were hot. I mean, really hot. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown, Art of Fighting, World Heroes, Killer Instinct. I mean, I can go on and on here. Then there was Clay Fighter. Though the game may have not held up to the test of time, this was one hell of a gem for hardcore fighting games back then. This genre was known for legendary soundtracks, and though this game falls a bit short, it did feature a pretty advanced theme song that features lyrics and all, which is pretty impressive for the 16-bit era. The NES wasn't a very powerful or diverse console when it came to sound, so developers had to get creative to make levels come to life. This led to some pretty interesting themes throughout the life of the console. One of the most unique, in my opinion, would be the sewer level from the NES release of the Terminator. This was just... I don't know what they were thinking here. It just sounds like noise set to a tempo. And to top things off, it wasn't a very enjoyable game, so the bad music was just kind of the icing on top of the cake. Daytona USA just screams early 90s arcade racing to me. This ahead of its time arcade game was ported to the Sega Saturn in the mid-90s, and while the soundtrack kept the same compositions, they were re-recorded for the Saturn with full lyric tracks, as the limited sound hardware on the arcade unit could only utilize lyric samples. While both soundtracks are now infamous, I'd have to say the arcade version is more raw, and by the time the Saturn version was released, it appears that Takanobu Mitsuyoshi's English had improved a bit.
Rolling Stone!
Donkey Kong has been around for decades, but it wasn't until the mid-90s that this banana fiend really broke out and became a superstar with Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo. Along with then revolutionary graphical advancements, the game also featured a now classic soundtrack that I still enjoy to this day. So when a Nintendo 64 game was announced for the series, I was expecting a killer soundtrack, but I wasn't really expecting this.
He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well. He's finally back to kick some tail. His coconut gun can fire in spurts. If he shoots ya, it's gonna hurt. He's bigger, faster, and stronger too. He's the first member of the DK crew.
Outrun was a series that always had a lot of great music. There had been many sequels and spin-offs throughout the years, which led up to Outrun 2006, released for the Xbox and PS2. Though this game featured a lot of remixed versions of the original game's soundtrack, there were also some new tunes, and these were unlike anything we had ever heard in the series.
When I saw you, when you were cruising in your car, well, I was down, I was lost and insecure. It's magical, he found me, summer breeze bringing a change of fate. He came by to ask me for a ride with him.
In fact, I really can't say I've ever heard music like this in any racing game. Ever. It's weird though because it fits.
Tonight, here I go. Feel so alive out here on the road, yeah. Reach to the stars, now that the day is over. Take me high, feel so free. Everything feels so right. Under the night, we'll take a ride to make every moment come alive. Jumping and speeding and spinning and turning, oh
There's so many more songs out there that I either forgot about or just never heard. If you know of some, let me know in the comments section. And with that, I leave you with a short but classic clip from the mid-90s classic Sega Rally Championship.